off, all you're going to hear is fan noise. Good morning, everybody. And here we are back in the parking lot after our 1 week departure. Well, a little over a week, but um, yeah, like I said, we didn't do a whole lot on vacation. It's just like I said, we took you know one trip that was just down to two trips technically. I went to go visit my mom. Of course, we went to the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, because it was only like 3.5 hours away from Homestead, and it was basically like a one-tank trip. If you used to have anybody who did those back in the day on your local news, because we did. We had a guy named Neil Zerker who did one-tank trips. And he could show you places back in the day you could travel to, on one tank of gas. But two, I'm not kidding. If it weren't for the fact I get struck by copyright, I would have already made a video, to the song. I can't remember the name of the band. The name of the song was Kings of Wishful Thinking. And I believe this was off one of the big 90s movie soundtracks back in the day. And because there's far too much wishful thinking going on. There's, no real informed opinions and a whole lot of optimism. Like I said, optimism I don't mind. But the simple fact of the matter is this. If Disney had chose to renew the show, you'd have already heard it like a month ago. You'd have heard it, like I said, I think one of the reasons, like I said, Shooty bailed, besides the fact that they had no idea what the hell was going on with the show, is the fact I think that they already made their determination. They aren't getting the phone call. And I hate to sound like I'm draining on anybody's parade or, whizzing in their lemonade or whatever you want to call it. But here's the thing that's been going around that's just making me want to, shit my pants and go, no, that's not how it works. They're waiting until after. They're waiting until after the war between the land and the sea airs to make a determination. No. No, 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 no. That's not how it works. War between the land and the sea is done, filmed, and like that. Yeah, they'll show it, but it doesn't count one iota. It doesn't count a grain of sand. It doesn't count the length of your average weight, steroid-ridden jock's penis. How many ratings or what you call it that war between the land and the sea gets. What determines it is how well did the show do. And I love how everybody's been going on and on and on about the overnight ratings in Britain. And like I said, it's like, no, the only numbers that matter are the streaming numbers. Overnights on one channel on the one part of the planet don't mean jack shit anymore. My Jeep is a 2020, by the way, for you folks who just asked. I got one that was a few years older because, like I said, there isn't no we're going to wait until after the spinoff airs to make an announcement, unless the BBC makes the announcement that they finally say, okay, we're going to have to throw in the towel because Disney said no, and they said no months ago. We just didn't bother to tell you because it seems to me, like I said, this is all speculation and opinion on my part. It seems like there's a mad scramble to keep the negative news buried in desperate hopes that they can say, well, the show is not staying on Disney, but we're going to do it this way. The point of the matter is this. When Chibnall brought in new writers, people screamed to the high heavens. They immediately attacked this, that, and anything that happened on the show. And trust me, there were shows, as in every season of Doctor Who, that deserved to, be, rated negatively, okay? Like, I'll still never forgive them for the, Whittaker era, like, Arachnids in the UK. There was no real thought that went into the end game on that episode at all. And you could tell, when it aired. And also, with like, oh gosh, the Arachnids in the UK, and there's another one that's sticking out in my mind. Orphan 55 was just, sure, it made for a good suspense story, but why is everybody walking around wearing nose pieces, but Benny, who medically needs oxygen, Benny! That's another thing that killed that episode, is walking around with a full-blown oxygen tank. You see, it's little things like that, yeah. And like I said, there's a lot of people who are divided on certain. Like I said, I like the Pating myself. Sure, it wasn't the greatest episode in the world, but it didn't fall anywhere near the region of, what you call it, Arachnids in the UK. No, don't shoot the spiders. We planned on running them into a tunnel and letting them suffocate to death. Who the hell wrote this shit? Please tell me that when that line aired, actually on television, this person buried their head in shame. I would have worn a paper bag over my head for a week after if I had written something like that and it actually made it out into the public in some way, shape, or form. Don't shoot the spiders, because we had this more humane plan of either gassing them or running them into this chamber, letting them suffocate to death. Okay, yeah. All right, so yeah, like I said, everybody writes stinkers. Okay? That one, like I said, I would have hung my head in shame on. But like I said, everybody always pokes such fun on all the Chibnall stinkers, but they never really talk about, his greater episodes like, yeah, sure, Cyberwoman, oh God, whoever thought about that, like I said, I have an eerie feeling he got handed a treatment, said, look, we want to do this. And of course, he didn't see the end result with the suit. He didn't know what the Cyberwoman was going to look like when he wrote that. And it turned out to be a cyber dominatrix or whatever. But yeah, like I said, people write bad shit. In that case, though, that was just really bad. Everybody writes stinkers. Even RTD's written stinkers. There's times when you're on point, and there's other times when, bam. Just like, like I said, the more famous one by J. Michael Straczynski, Gray, I think it was Gray 17 is missing or something like that. Even he admits, yeah, that one looked great on paper, but then when we went to execute it, it was like, oh my God, what have we done? Yeah, nobody is 100% perfect, but what I'm saying is, but here's the thing. You've got all these people now, and a lot of them are these big wind tunnel tested hairdo, baby-faced, what do you call it? It's running around telling people, well, they're probably waiting for an announcement, like they know something. And it's like, no, you don't, because that's not how it works. They're not going to wait until after the spinoff airs to tell you, unless they are using it as a stopgap measure, but still, even then, it would be painfully obvious. Yeah, somebody passed me the PDF of Long Barrow, but I'm like, if I'm going to read a book, okay, if I'm going to actually, use my eyes to read a book, I want to hold it in my hand, okay? Reading on a screen after a while, screws with your vision. I love this. We came back to work today, by the way, after being gone for a week. And once again, like they did a few years ago, they are redoing the main parking lot we park in. They have no handicap spaces marked out, which means if I park over there right now with a car not being of the manufacturer or the company I work for, I will get a tag on my car if I park over there. And my car could possibly be towed. So I'm going to be parking over here in front of admin. At least that's what everyone else will be doing, which means I'm going to have to probably leave for work earlier every morning just to make sure I even have a space that's anywhere near where I work at. I love this. People are showing up to work, and now they're going to try to cram everybody into half the parking lot because they decided to wait until everybody's coming back to work to repave the parking lot. Where did common sense die? But okay, Yeah, for what I heard, like I said, I've heard little bits and pieces about lung bear here and there. That's where I believe looming got started, and um, I have not listened to the Jody Big Finish today, with time permitting. I'll be running through some. I got an audio book I want to listen to today, and I've also have that on the phone ready. So I will give it a listen probably today, Vampire Weekend. A lot of people are rating it very highly. They said this is very well written and very well done, so I'm looking forward to it. I look at it this way: Chibnall's probably sitting somewhere going, "Well, they can't bitch at me about it now if it ain't good." But no, they are not. Okay, so let's get back to the main topic: wishful thinking. If they were going to renew this show, you'd know it already. They're not going to sit back and wait for the spin off the air to let the results go. All right? Like I said, you've had a bunch of people with happy go lucky faces, wind tunnel tested hairdos, and, looking like they just walked out of some glam shot that are sitting there telling you about how, oh, well, they're going to probably wait until after, War Between the Land and the Sea airs to give us an announcement. No, you'd have had a new doctor announced by now. You'd have a season planned. They'd already be filming by now for the next season if you were renewed, because they've been sitting there waiting for that decision to come for how long. And also, yeah, remember, no gap years. All right, what happened to Craig Charles at Comic-Con yesterday? I missed this. I spent the last week mainly playing Fallout 76, and when we did decide to go somewhere, I went to somewhere that's an actual location in Fallout 76. That's another reason I wanted to go see the Mothman Museum, is because Point Pleasant, Virginia, and the Mothman Museum are in the game Fallout 76. Even though it's that alternate version universe of it, you see. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to go see it. Um, okay, so they posted a video of them knocking on his hotel door looking for him. That's right, Craig Charles. All right, now it just hit me. Craig Charles, of course, Red Dwarf, and played Lister, and not exactly a happy history with alcohol going on there. All right, so what happened? Was that it? Just them banging on his door? Okay, I missed that with Berriman, and I don't blame him, because if it was not for Berriman, Captain Jack, there wouldn't have been no goddamn Torchwood. All right? It's that simple. Torchwood without John Berriman is like saying, well, I'm going to go squeeze the Charmin without Mr. Whipple, for you people who are old enough to remember that shit, okay? That's like saying elves are making cookies and trees without Keebler, all right? It's just not going to work. Okay, so George Shear did everything on Twitter about Craig, Charles, and Berriman. Okay, I'll have to look him up. I believe I'm following him, so I'll have to go. Yeah, I'll have to go check that out. Thank you, Mark. Well, folks, I just looked at the time, and now it's time to go back to reality. Back to work. Hey, look, I had a Red Dwarf reference right there. Didn't even know it. Back to reality. Okay, got to go back to work today, which I'm looking forward to about as much as most people look forward to that rectal probe you get on the alien abduction. You know, especially when that sucker's cold, you know. But okay, but yeah, doing a Torchwood reunion without Berriman is just plain obnoxious, silly, and stupid. Because without Captain Jack as the center of the Torchwood team, it would have never went any goddamn where. So I kind of agree with Berriman being upset. I would be too, because this shit's gotten ridiculous with him being thrown under the bus for something he did over a decade before and had already apologized for. Yet meanwhile, a certain other person we won't name, Noel Clark, is the one who was getting harassed, yet they threw John Berriman under the bus for something he'd already apologized for that didn't involve harassing fellow co-workers. Well, that is, unless you count his wiener. But, all right, but before we get too awkward, I got to get back in. I got to get inside, get back to work. So everyone, please take care. Be kind. Be calm. Be safe. We will be seeing you all tomorrow morning. So take care, everyone. See you on the flip side. And I hope we do get positive news about Doctor Who, but I highly doubt it at this point. We should have already heard some. Take care, everyone.